Hi there. Thank you for visiting my channel. Please do not forget to press the subscribe button, give a thumbs up for a like, comment, and please do share. Now, this is the second in a two-part series. It was indeed supposed to be one, but somehow my guides led me down a different path, and I ended up showing an example of reincarnation and its fast. Well, this is what this channel is about. But with regards to the current situation in the world, and as I have said before, I will touch upon current event as they show some relevance to the truth that is reincarnation and its facts. So that's just what they did. Now, this one will definitely be only about shaman, psychic medium, prophets, teachers, and guides. But as usual, before we head to that, I like to reintroduce myself, tell you what I do, what I'm about, and I will try and make it snappy and get to the topic. Now, my name is Winifred Davis. I have been a shaman, a psychic medium, traditional and spiritual counselor and healer for the past 37 years, and I do read. I like to read so I don't forget anything. Not that I don't know what I'm talking about. I most certainly do. I am also an author, a poet, essayist, and former spoken word movement performer. I subscribe to no religion, and I believe in universal justice and truth. With the imposter justice of man, there is an exception to every rule. With universal justice, there are no exceptions to its rules. There is no my side, your side to the truth. The truth stands unopposed. Please remember that I'm not here to lead anyone. I do not wish to be a leader of anything, as I do not want to be led by anyone. My duty is only to my conscience, the light that guides my free will. And each of us was given free will at creation with a conscience. That is the light to guide that free will. That's why we're responsible, each of us, for our own actions, and we cannot blame anyone. Not our general, not our president, not our king, not our parents, not our brother. We are responsible for our own actions. Now, my messages, I am a vessel, a messenger, and I deliver messages as given by the collective, which includes my guides, members of the higher hierarchies, and that includes the angelic realm as well. That's just the way it is. Now, I'm fulfilling my self-soul contract. That's what I agreed to before I entered this lifetime. I agreed to be a vessel and a messenger to deliver messages. Consequently, some of these messages, because they are the truth, they're harsh, they're brutal, because sometimes we have to, not sometimes, but all the time, we have to face the truth, no matter how brutal it is, because that's the only way we can move up the ladder of soul restoration and become, if you want to say, better, to advance and restore, bring equilibrium to our soul. Now, as I said, I'm not here to lead anyone or to convert anyone, because each man must evolve according to his own light. Please do not freely interpret what I say. Say exactly what I say. If I say the sky is blue, I mean all shades of blue. I did not say sky blue, marine blue, navy blue, baby blue. I said blue, all shades of blue. That's what that means. If you do not understand something, please email me. My email is listed below, or ask me in the comment section below. Now, as I said, please do not freely interpret what I say, because, as I like to say, by the time we interpret and it gets around to the 10th person and they repeat whatever has been interpreted, and each one's interpreting and reinterpreting, that tiny fish in that small aquarium has become a whale. And a whale is not even a fish, it's a mammal. And that tiny aquarium has become a vast ocean, which is surely not a small aquarium, I should say. Now, at times, as I said, I will discuss current events at length, but this channel is about the truth that is reincarnation and its facts. Now, this is a very special, what I call coupleth over period of greater transition that only happens ever so often. Now, there are always periods of transition, smaller ones going on, but this one is special, and it looks like end times, the apocalypse, revelation, sorry, Armageddon. But we will go on. Life will continue. But this one, everywhere on Earth, the planet, so it's the climate, the environment, everything is affected. None will be immune to what's going on right now. Now, please do not forget that there's no peace in Gaza. And I will say this as long as I have to say it. And you'll probably get tired of it, but we cannot get tired of genocide and ethnic cleansing and injustice, especially to children and babies. Now, that's my, if you want to call it, pet peeve. But I hate wars with a passion because of what it does to our children. Please do not forget there's no peace in Gaza. The genocide and ethnic cleansing continues. Forget about the ceasefire where, you cease fire, but somebody else continue firing, and it's getting worse, and we can expect that it will break out to the levels that it was last year. And it's now spread to Lebanon, the ethnic cleansing, the genocide. It's in the West Bank. And if they have their wish, it will go to Iran. But I dwell on this particular conflict because my guides want me to dwell on it, because it's providential. And at a later date, I will explain why. When it all comes together with Nefertiti and Akhenaten and all of that comes together, then I will explain why. Now, the crisis in Sudan, we can't forget that either. There were 15 million people facing famine. It's horrific there. Horrific. And of course, Israel is involved in that one as well. Throughout the whole of Africa, this little place is creating so much misery. Don't forget the DRC, that's the Congo. Don't forget Yemen and the misery there, begun in about 2015. And the children, my God. Do not forget any children who are suffering, whether they are the children of perpetrators like Israel, and their children in Israel who are suffering from, of course, rockets and missiles can't play running to shelters all the time. Maybe some have lost their parents or a parent, but they have nothing to do with this. It's the adults who have something to do with this. No child, no matter whether they're the children of perpetrators or victims, deserve to be without food, shelter. Every child deserves the right to play, the right to food, water, medicine, good health care, and education, the right to be loved. Every child, whether they are the children of perpetrators or victims. Now, I'm sorry about that, but like I do become a little moved. Not a little, but a little bit perturbed when I think about all the suffering and all the children, and those children in Gaza. Oh, that's just, anyhow, let's get on with what we are supposed to get on with here. I could get carried away. Now, what is the difference between a psychic medium and a shaman? Mediumship can come through the different senses: sight, clairvoyance, right? You think of the French voir, to see, voyeur, all has to do with sight. Hearing, clairaudience, auditory. Feelings, clairsentient. And just knowing, claircognizance. Some even do their mediumship through scent, by smelling. Some use one or more or all of these different senses. A psychic medium sees and can help with advice and communicates with spirits, most of them. We can sometimes get overwhelmed with terms, so I like to keep things simple. The truth lies in simplicity, I like to say, and lies hide in the webs and the mazes of complexity. Now, my task, my soul contract, is to impart wisdom, knowledge, and understanding with regards to the truth that is reincarnation and its facts, so that everyone can understand it. So I don't like getting into different terms so that you feel you have to be in a certain club to understand the jargon. Like each vocation has its jargon. Like doctors have their jargon, lawyers have their jargon, electricians have their jargon. I like to keep it simple so that you don't feel out of place, because if I should use some of the terms that they use in meditation or stuff like that, you probably feel, well, I'm not up there to know. You're talking about chakras and you're talking about this, what the devil is that? You don't understand. So I try to keep it simple, and if I cannot avoid a term, I will explain it to you in the most simplest of terms. Now, I will admit that I am not versed in a lot of New Age spirituality terms or meditation terms or any of that. I'm not. As I go along, and if what I'm doing, I need to learn something, I will learn it because I have to. Okay? So some of you out there are probably more versed in a lot of these terms than I am. You might be able to teach me something. Now, There is no one or correct way to do the vocations that I do, whether it's shaman, psychic medium, whatever. No one way, okay, and no correct way. So, for example, reading someone, okay, some people read with the tarot, some a plain deck of cards, some with tea leaves, coffee grounds. I know in Turkey they do, cowrie shells, crystal balls, sand, holding something that belongs to the client, a candle in a glass of water, or just a plain glass of water, photographs, smelling an item of clothing, or nothing at all. Some see images, some hear some sense, some know, or some do all of the above. Some shamans get into trances, many of them do, and others, without the trance, can enter the nether world. In other words, trance with your eyes wide open. Now, my husband, like when you get into a trance, sometimes, your spirit leaves the body, but you can, with those eyes wide open, you're here, but at the same time, you're there. You haven't left, right? So, you know what's going on around you in the temporal world, but at the same time you're seeing. It's difficult sometimes to explain. You're seeing, and you're there in the spiritual realm. Now, my late husband was a legend. He did this, as I do also, trance with your eyes wide open. No, he was a legend, a shaman's shaman. In Jamaica, they call a shaman an obeah man, and it has a negative connotation. But then we know that intention is the key, right? Intention is the key. And so he, for example, he was a master because other shaman came to him. He was where the buck stopped. It's like a lawyer's lawyer, right? The ultimate. And I'm not saying that because I was married to him. I'm saying that because it's recognized, it's known, right? The feats that he did were legendary, even in the newspapers, right? And I will at some point, I'm working on it, write a book about him and explain the facts as related to the truth that is reincarnation, and even one of his lifetimes, and why he had that ability. Because, for example, one of his lifetimes was in ancient Egypt, not at the time that I was there, where he was indeed a master, recognized as a high priest, one who had exceptional powers and knowledge of the spiritual world. Now, it was my pleasure working with him, and I always sing his praises. Our contract in this lifetime, I should say, was that I would go forward, build on his legacy with the truth that is reincarnation. But I get into that. You can check my website where I explain in details, and I will put that in the link in a link below, so you go directly to that page on my website. And believe me, they say that the truth is stranger than fiction, and some of those things are stranger than fiction. That's why I memorialize and I write and record, because sometimes truth is indeed stranger than fiction. So that will help you. Now, a shaman travels in between worlds. As I said, a shaman has to be a psychic medium, but a psychic medium does not have to be a shaman. So I hope that is clear. So a shaman is and has to be a psychic medium, but a psychic medium does not have to be a shaman. Furthermore, a shaman is able to effect changes, and there are limits to when he can effect changes, and that's where the truth that is reincarnation comes in, and I will get to that shortly. Now, as I said, he's able to make things happen, the shaman, with the help, of course, of their spiritual guides, the shaman's spiritual guides. The power of that shaman is determined by the power, right? How high the vibrations are of that shaman's guides, and also the higher his vibrations are. And when he, as I said, my husband was able to do certain things. So he's versed. He was versed. He had the experience, the prior lifetime experiences in this. So at the same time, with the help of guides of those higher vibrations, so that is what would make him, and what made him, because he's my late husband, he's not here anymore, not, at least not in the temporal world. That's what made him who he was, and gave him what we would say that awesome power. Now, as I said, a shaman effects changes. He makes things happen. Now, a shaman can find a needle, for example, in a haystack, and facilitate that needle returning to you without you having to necessarily find that haystack and search for it, because he told you, well, it's in the haystack, so you go to that haystack and search for it. And by that, what I mean is, I don't mean that the needle will obtain wings and fly directly to you. It will, you'll get it. The universe will work it out. Now, for example, let me take another example. And I'll use something that I have done many times before over the years. But in this particular instance, someone's car was stolen, and they came to me. Now, in Canada, where I live, and in the province where I live, stolen cars, it's a rash. There's a rash of it. And very often you will not find your car. The police won't be able to find your car, because sometimes they chop them up, or as they would say, and they do whatever they're doing, and they ship them overseas. So I had a client, she came, they'd stolen her car. I said, okay, well, at least she came in time. It wasn't too late before it would have been shipped off. And I did what I had to do, and with my guides. And she called me. about a week later and told me that they had found her car. We're in Ontario. Her car was in Quebec. It was just about to be shipped out. So it was the police that called her and said they had recovered her car. The police from Quebec, by the way. So that's what we do as shaman. We can do things like that, okay? Now, in terms of exorcisms, it depends on the strength and vibration, the hierarchy of our guides, so that we're able to overcome the most stubborn of spirits. If you've ever watched The Exorcist and you see this one would come in and that one would come in and no one was able to really master that spirit that possessed, I think it was Linda Blair, the actress. And that is true. And I have the story. And it's a very famous story in Jamaica about Kopi. He was quite a legendary spirit. He burnt the cane fields. The cane fields were on fire. And there were articles written about all these things that were going on. And as each person would come, there were priests and there were other shaman and whoever would come around, and they would only hear the spirit saying, "And that you come with? Me know that already. That's what you're bringing? I know that stuff." And people would gather day after day after day and watch the cane fields burning. And no one could handle Kopi, but my husband did. And years, decades after, a gentleman he was a mason coming to help us, but he didn't know where he was coming. But when he showed up at our home and he looked at my husband, he said, "Oh my God, you're the man," because he was younger then. But he remembered my husband. He was the man who came and exorcised that property. So it depends on your vibration and the vibration of the spirits who help you. Now that's what shamans do, right? So a good one will be able to overcome and master the most stubborn of spirits. Now, as previously mentioned, as I talked about in my other books, about the Akashic records, those records enable both the psychic medium and the shaman to read the past, look into the present, and predict the future. Reincarnation and its facts, the knowledge of the journey of the soul, explains why and how we are able to make predictions or see into the past, and why a shaman, as in tuned or proficient as they may be in their vocation, cannot effect desired changes, cannot change something in some circumstances to help with our issue or our problem. So in other words, we could say reincarnation is the theory. It explains why, the why and the how. Now, my late husband, he was a veritable master, without a doubt. But he was not versed in the truth that is reincarnation. That's my task. That's why I'm here. That was part of our soul contract, because he reintroduced me to a vocation that I had practiced in so many of my lifetimes. Now, I now will take his work to a different level. And as I said, I will put the link below that will explain all of this. Now, as I said, part of it sounds unreal, but that is how the universe is. And that is why I memorialize things and I record things to show that it was so and just not made up. Now let me digress for a moment here to explain something about the Akashic records. Now the Akashic records is that great repository or library of the universe that has all our past actions and thoughts. Every one of us, each of us, okay? Past, present, and future. I should say, though, some of our future actions. Please note that predictions can also come, of course, in messages and visions and what have you. Or just knowing. Sometimes we just know. Now, some of the future events are not in the Akashic records at a given time that we might access them. What is not in those records are events that result from the free will of individuals and indicate near future events that will become a part of the Akashic records as they happen or just as they're about to occur based on choice. So we haven't made the choice yet. We haven't decided whether we're gonna go right or left. So in the records, it wouldn't tell us that that is the future because it's all about choice. And we haven't made that choice yet. Now, what happens with a prophet and where a prophet comes in? That as you might read the record, you might have access to that record. But what is not in there, you can't tell, but a prophet will be able to tell what is not in that record because he has access to the angelic realm, to those of higher hierarchies, and the ability. Sometimes you eavesdrop so they know the choice as you're making that choice. They hear and they know. And I will give you, for example, one of the readings, one of the messages that I recorded and memorialized, and it's in some of my other videos. I will illustrate with this message. Now, this message was delivered by the prophet, okay, who lived in the Levant during the 9th century BCE, and I won't say his name at the moment. Now, this message was, as I said, memorialized in one or two of the recent videos I did on February 28th, 2026 at 11:28 a.m. Message: there will be no two-state solution. There will be a one-state solution. And although there might be a preliminary one, the one that will last will not be the one that Israel imagines. For indeed, Israel will be absorbed into one state. For behold, there shall arise an energy of Saladin. The question is not if Israel will be absorbed into a one state, but one of when. How it will be absorbed will depend on its actions now and from this moment forward, and this moment would be February 28th, 2026 at 11:28 a.m. This present in which we are living is becoming the past, and so these present actions will determine how it will be absorbed. In the final analysis, we must all surrender to the clock of the universe, Father Time, divine timing. It is better to be like the peach rose that lost not one petal in a Category 5 hurricane, or the coconut tree, than to fall like the big deciduous tree, like the breadfruit. We must be flexible in life. I cannot say when. Perhaps it will not be my lifetime, but it will come. Israel will be a one state part of a one state that is written. What is not yet written is how. It is up to Israel and its population to decide that part of its destiny. Let the record speak for itself, and I say with the greatest of humility, I am just a messenger, as I was more than 2,800 years ago in the Levant, and I would say from Gilead. And March 24th at 12:12 a.m., there might be an exodus, a real exodus, not like the small one of long ago. This will be the real one. It is not set in stone. Only the people of Israel and their actions can determine this. Now, here we see it is not set in stone, this exodus. There might be. And only the people of Israel can determine this. So their actions will determine this. And if we go back to the first part of the message, first message, how? It is not a matter of whether, that is written, that it is going to be one state, but not the one that they imagine. How it will be absorbed, only they can determine that. That is not written. Is it going to be absorbed through war? Is it going to be absorbed through peace, through agreement? And I dare not think about other things. That is not written, so that would not be a part of the Akashic records yet, because choice. And even though some things, some events might be providential, outcomes do not have to be providential. They don't have to be. That means that they're not yet written in the records. It is the person, the people involved who will determine what will eventually be in the records. And of course that will become the past, right? Because the present becomes the past, right? And you look back, and then the past determines the future, and the future eventually becomes the present, which becomes the past, and on and on and on, right? Now, let's go on to teachers and guides. Now, it is important that we have definitions straight. and know who our teachers and guides are. And I'm talking about, spiritually, lest we become prey to charlatans, pretenders, samphai, as they say in Jamaica, or my dad would say, faria. Now, we need no intermediaries in our relationship with our Creator. We alone are responsible for the well-being of our soul. No one can account for us. No one can intercede on our behalf because the divine laws are written. They are immutable. They are not to be amended. We need to pray for ourselves. We have to praise, thank, and ask, and listen. This is one of the great mistakes made by Nefertiti and Akhenaten during the New Kingdom, where they made themselves intermediaries, actually divine. Intermediaries, the only intermediaries between the Aten and the people. And, well, the Amun priests, the priests of Amun, were also intermediaries. And most places, that's how it is. Even now, we look on our pastor, our priests, as intermediaries. And I like to say Father cannot really pray for us. Like there are some sins that you got to talk to God directly about, that Father cannot speak on your behalf. Now, I say that lightly, but I'm serious here. Now, for that matter, most religious institutions dating back from before Mesopotamia and throughout all history, throughout the world, no matter what religion, what belief systems, always dictated that the priesthood or equivalent of the priesthood, and sometimes even shaman, were given that role as like acting as intermediaries between that something that is greater than us and us. No. There really is no intermediary. We can be guides and explain things and what have you, but at the end of the day, each one of us has to take responsibility for our actions, and that's something that is greater than us. He hears us, he or she, or whatever you want to ascribe. And I'm not gonna quibble about gender or anything like that here, so I'll use him, her, it, you. That's something that is greater than us. Hears you. Now, some of us are here to guide, but not to lead. We are never here to lead anyone. We are here to guide. Just as parents are here to guide their children. That's very important. They're not here to rule them. They're here to guide them. Some of us, as I said, are here to guide, but not to lead others, as we also expiate, advance, and restore our soul. Remember, there are no perfect human beings on this earth. These guides or teachers are not perfect because we are all, in quotes, sinners. These guides, and remember, a sin is a spiritual mistake. These guides, these teachers are never formed or trained in any institution, religious or otherwise. Of course, there may be found guides and teachers in religious and educational institutions, as there are such guides and teachers in all walks of life and on every rung of the social ladder. The guides and teachers, in other words, are of all masks, rich and poor, educated and uneducated, male and female. Yes, female, because to the eyes of the soul, gender is irrelevant, other than in its relevance to the expiation or trial that we have to, the lesson that we have to learn. These guides may be known by their deeds, their good thoughts, and sometimes they might have, not so good thoughts, but they'll catch up on themselves and self-correct. Their uprightness in character, they're not perfect though, remember that. They're unfazed by and unamazed at material wealth and by social status. We, and I alternate here using you and we, the guides and teachers, are fully aware of the fact that we should lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and dust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. And that's Matthew 6, verse 19, if you're familiar with the Bible. We have only to look in a junkyard or the garbage dump to make sense out of that advice. We are known for our willingness to give of ourselves without stopping to think, without the need to be recognized for our good deeds. We expect nothing in return. So there's no I do this for you, so I expect you to do something for me. No, we just do, and we never think about getting something in return. Rescue souls are like this. Akhenaten and Nefertiti in this lifetime are very much like this. They're not perfect. They still got a long ways to go. But they are like this in this lifetime. They're rescue souls, actually, in this lifetime, as they've always been from their first entry into the earthly plane. We're humble and self-effacing. We try our best not to be the story. Guides and teachers, they don't try to be the story. They don't like the limelight. We refrain from passing judgment, but sometimes we lapse. And we respect our brothers, paying little or no import to race, culture, political persuasion, religious affiliation, or any of the masks associated with Lucifer syndrome. We might say that we don't like a political party or not. We don't agree with their message because it contravenes the divine principles of love, of common human decency. That's okay if our guides and teachers do not subscribe to those. However, they pray and they hope that those who subscribe to the lack of common human decency, that they would one day see the light. They're not going to force them, and they cannot force them, that one day they will see the light. We lead by example. To us, if you're teachers and guides, it matters not whether we are Muslim, Christian, Jew, Gentile, or pagan. We understand the weaknesses in others and try to help them overcome those weaknesses while we are also overcoming, working on, and trying to overcome our weaknesses, because none of us are perfect, but we understand. We do not tolerate, but instead respect those with views that are different from ours, as long as those views do not contravene the divine principles of the fatherhood of God, brotherhood of man, doing unto others as we would have others, or them, as my guide said, do unto us. Love. And that which I do unto my brother, I do unto myself, for I am my brother's keeper. We unconditionally, those are the guides and teachers, unconditionally forgive affronts and offenses by others. We might be a little perturbed, but we get over that and forgive. We are truthful. We never tell others that God loves us, but hates them. We do not believe that we must be God-fearing, but rather that we must be God-loving. No good father is one that should be feared. We know that God is love and that He loves us, each of us unconditionally, whether we are murderers, infidels, prostitutes, doctors, preachers, princes, paupers, heterosexuals, transgenders, or homosexuals. We are always humble. Humility. Humility. We lead by example, but we are not leaders. We do not want to be leaders. When we make mistakes, we admit them and self-correct. We are not afraid to look in the mirror of self-reflection. And believe me, sometimes that reflection is not a pretty one. We have no desire, once again, to lead anyone or anything. We are led only by our conscience, because our duty is only to our conscience, the light that guides our free will and link us back to the Creator. We do not incite and instigate conflicts. We do not crave power. If we have power, we use it wisely to help as many as we can and make the world around us a better place. We do not use that power to accumulate more power so that we can abuse those without power even more. We believe in free will, allowing each man to advance according to his own light. We do not try to control others and do not allow others to control us. We believe neither in coercion nor conversion. We know that our duty is to our conscience and not to king, country, parents, and governments. In respecting our duty to our conscience, we will always adhere to the principles of the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, doing unto others as we would have them do unto us, love. Those are the divine principles. We stand for true universal justice without exception. Justice for us needs no reason, no excuses, no justification. Justice is immutable and universal and adheres to the principles of the fatherhood of God. Once again, the divine principles. Justice knows neither favor nor fear. It's not selective, and there are no exceptions to its rules. And I just reiterated what I've always said. Now, sometimes we're called wimps, cowards and liberals, wackos, heathens, hippies, and weirdos. We're cognizant of the fact that we're only vessels. We do not allow the actions of others to dictate our actions or to instigate reactions. In other words, we are not reactors. So we continue on the only path that leads us back to the Father. We are purposeful, deliberative, and deliberate in our actions. Nothing will distract us from our task, especially a divine task. Never mind the naysayers. We will not be distracted by the chatter on the side, the chitter chatter on the sides. We will not be distracted by the cacophony. A very popular saying in Eurasia says, the dogs bark, the caravan moves on, it goes on. Some say that it originated in Turkish, but I think most say that it originated in Arabic. No. I'm gonna try something here, and please forgive me if I butcher things, right? So, I'm gonna try now. 42 years ago, so long, I did a course in literary Arabic, and of course, I don't remember a lick of it because I never really used it. However, when I butchered this, if my professor were alive today, he was part Turkish and part Irish. I'm just digressing here. And when we entered the class the first day, the first thing he said was, I don't care how brilliant you are. I will fail you. I will give you a failing grade if I ever hear any of you say Arabic, Arab, Iraq, or Iran. We say Iran. We say Iraq, and we say Arabic and Arab. I don't want to hear that American pronunciation in here. That's what he said. So, if he heard what I'm going to say here in Arabic, which is the dogs bark, and the caravan moves on, I'm lightening the mood here, he would probably I would definitely get a failing grade, but I'm gonna try it. My daughter would probably laugh when she hears me trying to pronounce it. She speaks Arabic. So here we go in Arabic. It is Tanba wal kalabu watata harak al kafilatu. I hope I did okay. Now, in Turkish, that the dogs bark, the caravan moves on. It is itruf kervan yurush. And in Russian, forgive my pronunciation here, Sabaki layut, caravan idiot. And that's my linguistic lesson for tonight. Forgive the butchering of the languages. Now, if we achieve, right, through unconditional forgiveness and love of self and others, we will understand the weaknesses in others and forgive injury. And now that is what teachers and guides do. Sometimes, as I said, we falter, but we do not hesitate to use the mirror of self-reflection and are not afraid to look at our reflection, which I say is sometimes not pretty, in that mirror, admit to our weaknesses and try to correct them. We also respect our environment, choosing not to abuse it. We know that we are not the masters of this earth. who were put here to have dominion over other living things or our brothers. We know that there are no chosen few, and that the Creator did not bequeath unto any of us lands, seas, ocean, or the air. And we know that the borders that we make are illusionary. We know that we are only tenants on this earth, and so we must trod ever so lightly. We know that we must take care of ourselves, of each other, and our temporary home called earth, and all the creatures that dwell thereon. We, the teachers and guides, are not wrapped up in our own sense of greatness. We know that we must wait upon time, and that time waits on no man. Therefore, time is the master. We are all subject to the clock of the universe, divine timing. We know that nothing is possible without the Creator, that's something that is greater than us. But all things are possible with that something that is greater than us. Our faith, our belief, and our focus, and by the way, faith, focus, and belief creates miracles. But getting back to this, our faith, our belief, and focus, even in the most severe of adversities, we remain steadfast and undaunted. Sometimes we might wobble a bit, but we come back to being undaunted and steadfast. We know that thy will be done, as it was in the beginning, so shall it be in the end. We're almost done. Now we're going to go to prophets. Now, a prophet is one who receives messages predicting future events that concern one or more groups of people or all of humanity and the earth. The messages that we get can only serve as warnings. They're like the stone that the angel throws to warn us, which is what history basically is. A prophet is but a vessel delivering those messages through their voice or through their pen. And so they deliver those messages. Some get it, some sell it. I deliver them exactly how I get them. As my grandmother Ella used to say, some get it, some sell it. Me nah go hold me mouth a ground fi talk, left me make me talk. So I will not face plant when I get a message. That's what prophets do. They don't face plant when they get the message. Whether it's harsh or not, or whether they lose their heads or not, they deliver the message as is. Prophets sometimes are the angels, as I said, that throw the stone to spoil that picture, to prevent us from falling over the precipice. And as I said before, these events might not be in the Akashic records, as we will recall that not all future events are in the records, as some are still to be determined by present actions and events. Sometimes not all existent in the records is accessible even to those who can access them, and may only be given when divine timing and the keeper of the records deems it so, or deem it so. We are not privy to everything. Prophets are also given messages that might lead us to greater understanding of our existence, leading to new belief systems or principles and knowledge. And these systems and principles and knowledge can affect discoveries and advancements in, for example, fields of science and, of course, other fields. And so remember now, prophets are sometimes able to tell you things that are not in those records. For example, because they're getting those messages. And doesn't concern our thoughts, for example. And that's what the records are. Our thoughts and actions, past, present, and some future. Because they're getting messages from the higher realms, from the keeper of the secrets, the angelic realm. And that is not being presumptuous. That's just the way it is. That's just the way it's always been when we speak of Elisha, when we speak of Malachi and other prophets in I'm speaking of biblical prophets here, but then you have, and in Islam they accept some of the prophets in the Bible, and they speak of Muhammad, for example. And in Judaism it would be the same as in Christianity and in Islam. But whether if you're talking about Hinduism or in other belief systems that don't have, that we know of, but they have their prophets. So prophets have always existed. People who are in tune with the higher realm, this is what they choose to do on this earth when they decide they're gonna come to a certain lifetime. And so, as here, when I'm not reading, I digress and talk on and on. So prophets get messages that are not in the records because it concerns, certain events. They get those directly from the higher realms. And sometimes concerning what now decisions are to be made and the free will. Okay, so you're at a fork in the road, so it's not in the records because you haven't made that decision yet. But a prophet can sometimes know and be able to tell others, because sometimes, guess what? They eavesdrop. And it would be just like with Netanyahu, when I went eavesdropping and heard them making their plans. So you have that, right? Or when I eavesdrop and was able to hear what was being discussed at a house in Jamaica, and only to hear them, the one person who was there, tell my husband 2 days later exactly what I told him when I arrived in Jamaica the day after. And the lady verified it. So sometimes we eavesdrop, and that's how we can hear before. Now, how do we know that these inspirations that the teachers and guides might give out, or what a prophet has to say, how do we know that they are indeed from the higher powers and not, people make up a lot of stuff. We know that, people have manifestos and they say that, when they form different religions and belief systems and, they were directed that this is so and whatever and whatever. How do we know that it's really from the higher powers? As I discussed before, Messages that are true inspirations never separate and segregate. They never incite violence and usurp the free will of others. They never advocate supremacist ideology and practices like I'm better than they are. We are better than them. God loves us, but not them. We are chosen. They are not. There is respect. Every man must evolve according to his own light. These teachings, once again, it goes back to the divine principles. The fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, doing unto others as we would have them do unto us, love. That which I do unto my brother, I do unto myself, for I am my brother's keeper. That's how you know the messages. So now, remember now, they never separate and segregate. They never incite violence. They never try to usurp the free will of others, conversion and coercion. They never advocate supremacist ideology and practices. They never tell you that I am the intermediary and you must listen to what I have to say. They deliver the message and that's it. Take it or you don't. Some people might, others might not. And they must do no harm. All prophets are teachers and guides, but not all teachers and guides are prophets. In addition, a prophet can be one, some, or all of the following. Prophet can be a psychic medium, clairvoyant, clairsentient, clairaudient, healer, and shaman. I just listed out clear psychic mediums, because the ways in which we do our mediumship, clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, claircognizant. I forgot that. No institution, religious or otherwise, can determine or make a prophet. And when I say make a prophet, now it's PROPHET. We're not talking about money here. And the prophet does not need its designation, doesn't need his or her designation or certification from any institution. That prophet's messages will stand for themselves on their own. In other words, let the record stand for itself. Let the record speak for itself. Because they will be proven wrong or right at some point. The proof is in the pudding. The history of the soul and previous experience in prior incarnations and the soul purpose or contract so chosen by that entity is the spiritual plane. In the spiritual plane determines who is a true prophet in a given lifetime. Recall that our intention and soul purpose dispel the erroneous belief by others that we cannot be a prophet and at the same time be a shaman or psychic medium, because a prophet is of God and the other two, shaman and psychic medium, are of demons and the devil. There are no demons. We are demons. We are the demons. By our actions, the type of actions we commit. So there are no demons from any strange planet to infest us and to take responsibility for our own action. And that's what I find, that a lot of people who, well, they agree there is no such thing as the devil, but they turn around and they talk about demons from some galaxy or whatever, responsible for our behavior. We, each person, is responsible for his own actions, and that is the message I have gotten. That is the understanding I have gotten. That is the message I deliver. And that conscience, that light, is what makes us responsible for our own actions, not some demons. It's just like hell on earth, hell and heaven, right here on earth, we create it. Now, I'm going to just give two prophetic, or prophecies if you want to say. And this is explaining, for example, about the prophet Elijah and John the Baptist. Now, if you're, I do believe that the prophet Elijah is recognized as well in Islam. And he lived in the 9th century BCE. And he was the one, they said, that was taken up to heaven. That's how he left the earth, in a chariot of fire, with horses of fire. Well, I think that's metaphorical. But that was only to say that he would come again. So he didn't die. He would come again. He had a second coming. Now, my mom, I remember growing up, and my mom always said, like when people got on her nerves, and, she thought that they were trying to, sort of, what would it be? Get the best of her, like, get the better of her. And she would say, well, they could always go up in the air and come down in the chariot of fire 7 times like Elijah. They cannot stop me. I just thought I'd add that. I just remembered that. Oh my goodness. Anyhow, so Elijah, after Elijah went up, he left his legacy, or his heir, his apprentice, so to speak. His understudy was Elisha, who was more steady in personality. Now Elijah, he was awesome with his powers, but at the same time he suffered from depression, and he also had lots of self-doubt. For a man who could do so much, could heal so much, who defeated all these other prophets of Jezebel and Ahab, he just doubted himself a lot. And the fear. And, so what I'm going to say to you now is that the second coming, so that's what, him going up in a chariot of fire and the horses of fire, fiery horses, meant that he would come again. And so Jesus, the Christ, and that's what I say, Jesus, the Christ, because for me, Christhood means perfection. Okay, that's my interpretation. He said that John the Baptist, he thought John the Baptist was the second coming of Elijah. In other words, we could probably say the reincarnation of Elijah, but of course John the Baptist said he was not. So this is the message that I got. And I didn't write the date here, but this is the message. Look not for a person but the message in this cup runneth over period. Therein lies the second coming, not of John the Baptist, but of now. Not the messenger, but the message. I am just a messenger, as I was more than 2,800 years ago in the Levant. It is a time of great revelations, not just in one country, hemisphere, but all over the world. Everyone and everything is affected in one way or another. It is a time when we must take a stand for that which is right. This is the time of harvest, when we can now separate the wheat from the tares. This situation is unsustainable. This is the time love, such as that of which Malachi spoke about 500 years after Elijah spoke, when the hearts of children return to the Father and those of fathers to the children. Like Nefertiti, there have been many who have claimed the personage of Elijah. We must be in the understanding of the message. It is not the messenger, but the message. There will be other periods, such as this one in the future. Listen to the message. This message knows no mask of ethnicity, religion, gender, race. For behold, the message is one that has always been from the beginning, and the messenger has worn many different masks as the understanding has grown. This is the time, as stated in the records. I am just a messenger, as I was more than 2,800 years ago in the Levant, and I get chills when I just read that. As we go along on this channel, we will watch and see how it unfolds. And I thought I would just give you that because it explains the second coming is not of Jesus the Christ. It is not of anyone. It is of now. That's what is the message. And listen to the message and not the messenger. And I will have more to say on Elijah in my upcoming book, which will be out before the end of May. It's about Home at Last, reunion of Akhenaten and Nefertiti. A case study in how to reclaim past lives, and it goes into how we know a past life is real and how do we know that we are that person, and especially if that person or personage, I like to say, was famous in history. And it doesn't matter whether we were famous or not famous, most of us weren't, and we've done more to advance our souls and bring equilibrium to our souls as living anonymous lives. Oftentimes when we have that famous life, we have committed grave spiritual mistakes that have affected many people because we have that great power, and so many people we can and have affected, as did Akhenaten and Nefertiti with the children of Akhenaten. So I will have more to say when that book comes out. I will keep you apprised, and I will have another book. Another book is coming out, should be out by next week, Monday, and that one is What is Old is New and What is New is Old, and the lessons history teaches us. That one should be up, published by Monday of next week. So that would be May 11th. Now, Once again, thank you for visiting my channel. And gosh, I always want to keep my videos short, but somehow, well, I forget about the time now. I'll just forget that, give up on that. Please share my videos. And once again, some of what I say, both in the temporal and spiritual plane, and through those lenses, I should say through the temporal and spiritual lens, sometimes harsh, but always it comes from a place of love, even though I'm but human and appalled at what sometimes we do to each other. And so I like to end my videos as usual with this: hate hitching a ride, hate a contagion, a cancer metastasizing, an opportunistic bacteria, the cloud waiting to block the sun, hate waiting to hitch a ride on the train of love, hate the rat on its rat passage, hitching a ride on the boat to the play, hate the bed bug waiting for a suitcase, hate the roach riding on our coattails, hate the shadow lurking behind, sometimes longer than us, just lurking behind the thin curtain, waiting for its turn on center stage to take us to a place not so far away, a blast back from civilization to barbarism, from knowledge back to ignorance, from wisdom back to impudence. Hate never takes a holiday, always looking for the opportunity to hitch a ride on the train of love. Hate inhabits the same house as love within us. None of us is without blemish. All of us live in glass houses. We are all brothers in this brotherhood of man. God the Creator, that something that is greater than us, has no chosen few, gave unto us the vehicle that is reincarnation to help us bring our souls back into equilibrium. That something that is greater than us is not vindictive, selective, or supremacist in ideology and practices. That something that is greater than us bequeath unto none of us lands. That something that is greater than us would not be short-sighted, so short-sighted, cynical and cruel, because seas and oceans rise and drown, cover lands, volcanoes erupt and cover lands with lava and ashes, and earthquakes swallow us and our belongings. No, do not believe anyone who feeds you that Kool-Aid, that God, that something that is greater than us bequeathed or gave unto any group, any parcel of land. We cannot fight for or on behalf of that something that is greater than us. That something that is greater than us does not need us to fight on his behalf. What we need to do is to fight for ourselves. Fight to restore. And when I say fight, I mean work hard to restore equilibrium to our souls, to learn love, unconditional love and forgiveness of ourselves and of our brothers without being selective. When we think we can fight on behalf of that omnipotent something that is greater than us, that is arrogance. That's why we ended up here in this earthly plane, having to go through all these arduous journeys, every one of us, including me. We're all tenants on this earth, as I said before, throughout this, not here to have dominion or to rule over anything or anyone. We're not here to have dominion over the fowl of the air, the fish in the sea, or the beasts in the fields. We are not here to rule or have supremacy over our brothers. Let us be good tenants. Let us take care of ourselves and each other. Let us trod ever so lightly and take care of this planet we call Earth and all the creatures that dwell thereon. Remember that there is something that is greater than us. That's the fatherhood of God. We respect and show our love for that something that is greater than us by taking care of ourselves, the planet, and each other. May we never try to flee our conscience so that we will always do correct actions. May we learn to walk a mile in our brother's shoes so that we can see the humanity in each other. May we respect the differences in each other and know that our Creator has no chosen few. May we find comfort in the knowledge that each of us is slated for redemption and none is excluded. May we find solace in the knowledge that it is not a question of if, but one of when. Each of us shall return to the Father, and may we know that we are just tenants on this earth, and take care of each other, the earth and all the creatures that dwell thereon. May we always adhere to the principles of the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, doing unto others as we would have others do unto us. Or my guides say, have them do unto us. Love, those are the divine principles. May we know that that which I do unto my brother, I do unto myself, for I am my brother's keeper. May the tiny shrouds of light forever illuminate our path through the dark. May peace forever reside within us and between us. One divine, universal love.